And now I'd like to invite up Jasmine Khalik, who will introduce Joan Naviyuk Kane.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It is my pleasure to introduce Joan Naviyuk Kane. Joan Naviyuk Kane is Inupiaq with family from Ugiuvak. I just asked you and I did a terrible job. And author of The Cormorant Hunter's Wife, Hyperboreal, The Straits, Milk, Black Carbon, Sublingual, A Few Lines in the Manifest, Another Bright Departure, Dark Traffic, and Ex Machina. Dark Traffic was a finalist for the 2023 Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award, a Guggenheim Fellow, Radcliffe Fellow, Native Arts and Cultures Foundation's National Artist Fellow, Mellon Practitioner Fellow, and Whiting Award recipient. She received the 2023 Paul Engle Prize. She's taught creative writing at Harvard, Tufts, UMass Boston, the Institute of American Indian Arts, and Scripps College. She raises her children in Oregon, where she's an associate professor at Reed College. Anyway, that stuff aside, there are so many places I could begin in order to introduce Joan Naviyuk Kane's work tonight. Truly, I find it difficult to articulate what it was like to spend time with Ex Machina and Dark Traffic this week, how meaningful it was to me, the effect it washed over me. So many times in my life, I have to have the same realizations. Life is distressing, unfair, ours, and beautiful. I should say that I get to have the same realizations, and I got to them again through the precision of Joan Naviyuk Kane's poetry. Amidst everything Kane's books explore, for a small selection, like maps, history, the natural world, environmental destruction, Cold War communication systems, colonial violence, loss, gender, health, and time, the light shines brightest, I think, on language itself, all its muscle and musicality. In poems written in English and in Inupiaq, with crossouts and white space, almost familiar, archaic words, thick consonants and repetition, I, as the reader, see, hear, and understand the real reckonings that language can create, as well as what my part in it could be. We choose what to do with what we inherit. Language is living. When we read, we also write. We have a responsibility, these poems remind me, and it is lucky together to bear it. Ex Machina's penultimate poem, long title, here we go, in which the poems and poets agree that they are the result of choices that they have made along the way. Amazing. Kane puts this much better than I have here, writing, quote, and then there are the real poems, where the language creates its own tension, where the language reminds us to create a story and to become part of it, to stay alive until we come back. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Joan Naviyuk Kane to read real poems to us tonight.
Good evening. Along with others in my generation, I am called for our namesake, Naviyuk. In the Inupiaq tradition, we're named for one of our ancestors who has passed away shortly before our births, and we share their kinship relations after they have passed on, and their Inua, their life force. Along with my Avazaks, my relatives who are also named Naviyuk, I'm honoring our ancestor. I want to say thank you, Qawiaraq, to Paisley Rectal for inviting me to judge this for the 2023 Ega Shahid Ali Award, and the generosity of that invitation. A special thanks to the press, to Hannah, especially for her patience with me, Sadie, Aaron, and Jess for the hospitality today. What an honor it has been to be asked to serve as a judge. One of my students, Beatrice Qawiaraq, was the recipient of this award in 2022. So I'm always struck by how small the world can be. All right, I'm going to read some poems first, and then I will introduce and say some words about Sarah's work. I think I'll begin with rookeries. All men knew a secret of the northern part of an old world, a less perfect idea. For the Bicornuate woman, it was an island. Though its birds lose our trust, we might learn their language. After all, we have been taught to read and write, to remove our hands from other work as we watch water twist into rock, to cover our wounds, staying alive light after light. For something, I worry. The moon pronounced with clarity its known topography. Our letters and lists, reconstructed grammars. They replaced the ways in which we were grabbed and pushed, then shoved. Set a wife and her children to rove with indefinite orders. Lineal migration on a small scale is not nautical but conflictual. Of those men, we knew I could never do them any good. In this way, I forget and let the wind river. It gales and tears at my shoulders and wrists. The poem Dark Traffic originally had an epigraph from James Merrill, as many of these poems had epigraphs from various people. And the epigraph was melting, it changes the whole picture. Dark Traffic. And the snows buffer the sound of a voice set forth. I thought her lost already, that she had gone to neglect the late migration. Before it ceases, the ice collapses easily. There is no day without a symptom. Consolation may turn out to be a guttural practice, after all, the small gesture of sound lodged deep before it glides without warning downward. There is nothing but the wind, a howl and dive where water is thrown over water and sown into it. A howl and dive of wind, water she found flown over water where once we found ice, where the snow once stuttered the sound of that shouter shouting for this listener, holding her head in her hands, the head in its fine, blank way, an original. Gray eraser. There is no one to scold, even when the heavens deem the most abject of failures receptive to correction. Likewise, in cackleless sleep, the magpies remain tucked away. A mother can no longer dismiss her child as a spectacular waste of an education. Even the wind stills its sighs in the dry and bare branches of the nearby white spruce damaged by Lirula blight. Meanwhile, a pearl green fox retracts its untrussed tail through an eastward sky thick with unfamiliar stars. If I wake, missing the cold, fresh sound of new snow, I may still miss the kinds of places that scar me and complete my sorrow. Late at night, the birches must let their leaves pitch and imbricate the floor of what is left of the woods near what is left of me. I'll read just two more from this collection. This is called Sometimes There Are Even Scars. And waking night after night in an apartment parched, I looked out the window into the dark for some glimpse of what I've lost. An ocean that held so many boats built by men now dead, numerous windings through scree to crown, driveline, cairn, blind. I see nothing but the sky. Sometimes stars as bright as collarbones gleam before I blink, then find these firmaments also disappeared. Other nights, something Atlantic heaves with rain. When the storm lifts away, perhaps it will have left gaffed fish, surplus for a child, and another child to find. Perhaps I will no longer fight the mind that might hold but one swan, one hair, one figure. Perhaps I will not begin to cry because of the ways in which I mark the months as they accumulate and fall away. No blood, no certainty. I might yet reek of burnt things. My skirts may carry their stains as I pass trap after deadfall trap. The burren, the coffle of dog hitched to dogs, hitched to a lading of oil. This poem, I actually wrote this when Paisley asked me to submit some poems for the month that Paisley was in charge of Poet a Day. What is it called? Poem a Day. Poet a Day. We're so interchangeable. And I think I actually wrote it on the day that I got my divorce decree. So some of the language is actually from that. All right. It's called Nunatak. Nunatak, Nuna means land, and tak means something that is left behind. And there's another story that I won't get into. But anyway, Nunatak. In a strait, some things are useful. Others, true, she turns to ash. Thrust thus, her head thick with arrogance, infection, and futility. It could be how a young wife went, strewn with net-veined willow and mountain avon, trespass and wreckage. She could write about the year she turned to heat and haze, to lays, imumurat imarak dunga, of cannula and silver nitrate, of petiolus and akene, about to begin again, of greens as they green, of a man aged, eskered, of a confined gleam, to hereby dissolve and hold for naught, the soil, gravel, silt, groaning as the tools of our penultimate glacier, a glacier I might pronounce like grief. One does wish for words to thaw in the mouth, but find instead a tongue welt, erosional or depositional, raised and visible, rift into language and grit. I'll read a few newer poems too, and then I'll read one very last, very new poem. This is Don't Run Out. Real and white as snow, have they forgotten starting over and over, the swan crossing with a dark tide southward to the sound, not too far off firework and blast of something hard to reach and harder to escape. I remember how, without you, a woman's quarrel, I remember how, without him, a woman's quarrel, it passes into a quarrel with no one. And then this long poem I wrote like 10 years ago almost. I was on a trip to Ukraine in November and December of 2015. And I remember in one of the places that we were, someone in the audience asked if we would write about Ukraine, and if so, would we ever come back and read poems there? And I said, yeah, of course. And that has not come to pass. But anyhow, here's the poem. A hammer and drill bit to a pane of glass. I walk along a shore of salt and search for a sky reflecting blue all winter, though a mirror as it melts won't show what isn't there. And metal clapper on metal, and a lost photograph of the Ouroboros circling the bright days in Poltava and elsewhere as she crouched astride a latrine where the eggs inscribed with lines could empty nothing in supplication to the erased faces of the figures carted everywhere from the steps. And another translator in another translation drunk with his many-headed fire and recalling the topple and raise and afraid of women armed only with hand-turned spoons, thatch, and our children dreaming of potency and releasing all of us from poisons. In another day in Kharkiv, after the blizzarding away, in the lobby of a constructivist hotel, someone held Plath's poppies, asked what if. It was what as if they unblinded and could make me see. And finally, I will read some very new poems. This book was this chapbook, which I think is called, God, I don't even remember. How bad is that? Anyway, it's going to be out in 2028. So maybe I have a long time to remember the name of the book. Whatever. Okay. I have no clue. All right, that's terrifying. All right. Anyway, back into the poem where I'm at home. This is called After Anchorage. Told to put a light in my lamp, I turned from a daughter's work to take a tabular rock in hand, then struck as hail would strike, as a man who has grown sick of his wife will scrape and grind, as if he no longer hell's infants worldward in their blood rush, hollowing a cup to hold the oil I would otherwise have swallowed. I trusted nothing near, hungering for the light of the leaf as it unfurls, tending what I can, beguiling none. I tangled my neck in tresses, cutting the necks from my dresses, snarling what I knew, what I know I learned down through my dirt floor. I could have burned the smear of bear tallow I once felt forced to eat on an arm of the sea, whose waves but wrought their white across and up into the wind, when what should harbor winter now darkens down to parch. I'm just going to read. This is the penultimate poem. So there is a bunch of poems that are after Anchorage, and this one might be after Anchorage 1 or alternately after Anchorage I. Had read the ash, the scoria, their slippage. There rose no world. There rises only islands. So then we went away into the east to wait until the stars began disappearing, when at last we could ignore the natter of what, during the last drought, proved to scare the calves we heard only as noise as through heat through the door on a train. A refusal the last time I slept to dream of death. Instead, I dreamt of trammeling pasque flower, of having swam backward across the lake. And I'll, before I say some words to introduce Sara and Sara's work, I will read a poem that I wrote. Actually, I found myself, I thought, in a kind of drought, as I often think I find myself. And I think this poem is really in conversation with the poems in your book, because I wrote it after I read your manuscript. And I was thinking, as I will talk in the next thing that I say about the particular person that this is for. But this has a really bad title, but I'm going to read it anyway because I have 4 years to revise it. Elixirs for words to come. The first thing I will do, make myself indecipherable to you, for understanding revises a kind of hunger. My language has taken on all manner of smog. I come to fear. I come to fear the things that inspire me in the wake of our destroyers. I dream of my dead peers. I see how they do not want pretty things. I know they do not want me to describe pain of any kind. They gesture to the gold dredges hinging into the earth. They sink down as permafrost thaws, as we all sink down into a kind of hell. Let us wash ourselves in those waters. Let us thirst because we cannot drink them. Let our mothers tell us of their girlhoods, the ones they lost when they rolled willow leaves tight in toilet paper, smoked not to get high, not to die, but only to see visions of Mary, that Mary who is some kind of mother. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read the foreword, maybe with some improvisational moves. But I will say, well, I'll just read it, and then maybe I'll say a few things. So the poems in Two Signatures barbulate with lexical apperception. To read them aloud or on the page makes us aware that language, by which I mean diction, proves voice as much as it ratifies thought and choice. And Sara Ellen Fowler's precise, dynamic inflections remind me of a careful sentence in Barbara Johnson's introductory note to her 1987 volume, A World of Difference. Being positioned as a woman is not something that is entirely voluntary. I bring the citation of Barbara's words into and alongside the resplendent pages of Two Signatures, not just because I found traces of Barbara, a woman whose theoretical teachings brought me to life, by which I mean literature, in ways no other could, in the poems you have before you, but also because these poems read and reread blind by me alongside the many strong manuscripts. I read every single manuscript. Manuscripts submitted for publication articulated the unforeseen crises and necessities of womanhood in the contemporary moment in ways that recursively amplify the deaths and lives of Sylvia Plath and Marnie Ludwig. The former poet brought me into college in Barbara's classrooms. The latter poet, a classmate of mine in graduate school, helped me get out of classrooms and into the world. Note that the epigraph of Marnie Ludwig's was not included in the original manuscript that I read, and I found myself stunned at the uncanny coincidence of seeing the words of my dead peer as one of the epigraphs of Two Signatures. Now, that's too much about me, though hopefully enough to heighten and complexify the pleasure of hearing Two Signatures or reading it for yourself. As one of the early poems in Two Signatures declares, I want to believe myself outside the art. May these poems restore belief, engender it. May their formal turns, episodic brilliances, and insistences make this dark time one outside of art less so. Indeed, as a few lines in the poem Blue-Brown Morning I Step Through Common Starlings breathes forth. There are only tracks and tracers. This is not home. I am not home, but this lee fixes me bold. There is a creature just beyond my sightline. I mark our lyric time unhanded. Iliranemin, thank you again, and I'm so thrilled and honored. I can't wait to hear you read your poems. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I want to thank Joan for recognizing my work in this field with this prize. And I want to thank everyone at the University of Utah Press who brought Two Signatures into the world. The designer, Jessica Booth, marketing manager and poet shepherd Hannah New, project editor Susan Wagoner, who was texting me about dropped lines to make sure if they were correct, and the rest of the team. So thank you. Also, thank you to Sadie and Aaron for organizing my trip to read for you all. Okay. Glassell Park. There is no casual relationship. Strung, taut, looping, load, looping, adamant, I see a soul at the chevron on Verdugo. Someone already no one reaches toward, already omitted. One who's made their own shroud. In front of the topiary at the chevron and the rush hour intersection 50 yards wide. One invisible, twilight, forgotten. Soul draped in a bed sheet, inked with scriptures of innermost math, spiraling ordinations in ballpoint pen and permanent marker and pencil. Under the crosswalk sign, belt in hand, wavers a slow ascension, attempts to string up, to strangle. I am a holy fool and can't stop looking, remembering. I don't understand, gall dread fucking wonder, I remember.
another life. My neck in a horse barn with no shoes on. Soul grapples with cut eye holes, calling in night and the influence of their private divinity, inching tiptoes up to loop the belt to try to get their neck up to it, belt biting the shroud, the skin. My neck. Oh, a horse barn, my neck, because my neck homes, my voice remembers everything that happened and how ended for me last time, with no shoes on, others there and watching. I did not ask if it was my turn. I did not ask what would become of my body. I will not tell you what I said to my own self then. But I ask that you use your teeth. Please touch, please let me remember the yellow bones of air inside the taking. Kiss the throat of my fate with shut eyes, breath held down. Kiss the throat of my last fate. Could language be altar enough? In front of the topiary at the chevron on Verdugo. Saint and martyr, soul, in this world I am so sorry. I did not reach toward you, did not stop or call anyone. Okay, sorry, I have the page numbers somewhere. So the next poem I'm going to read exemplifies a kind of expanded mode of ekphrasis that I often work in. I'll source an artist's studio practice and biographical context as like a jumping off point, and then meditate on the textures that their art draws out in an effort to honor their work and address my more personal concerns. So Window was written in New Mexico, where the abstract painter Agnes Martin lived for many years. Window. The horizon measures itself in stillness. The fennels coming through in the dark. Linseed oil carries on the draft from the unscreened window, west-facing little message of trust. My canvases feign shudder in the temperature like a horse's rippling will. I believe in the horizon only. Oh, let me behold in it. A mixed pulse, a wash of, I take the pills. Silent dress circle of what care I need to keep painting here. The coffee is ready, and my loneliness is fast no milk, but patience. For the white-throated swift will call across the sagebrush. I am listening with my skin for her. Were it my steady line, gathering definition in the morning, purple, gray, and gratitude its own prism, we could sit the hour and watch the light break the face of the high desert. So there are multiple valences in the title of my book, 2 signatures. I would say energetic signatures, time signatures, most especially like lyric time and its possibilities. Signatures expressing an agreement or an understanding, a contract of sorts. There's an epithalamium in the book, so there's some marriage too. Yeah, 2 signatures also alludes to my experience of bipolar disorder. This next poem is called Lithium. I was but a young, unlearned water diviner, the stick in my hand toward my heart badly bent. Painted monument in the night of my body. My spinal column made not of petals painted Hidcote pink, nor Evelyn, nor rosette with rain coming through it. How's this sun so bald, so vivid turnt in the flower face? Not shimmering, no, blood gloam, tender inside my hunger. My sex made not of graphene painted water with no life, nor bronze throat light in the register of trust. I say rather, it's the color of the feeling of catching God. Reading with temperature. There are no tenants save for pressure, two pubic bones locked in friction, or sandstone, or deadlines. Reading is a wind born of the uneven heating of the atmosphere by sun. I pray for the entropy that will pull you apart with the most precision. Lidless, lawless air, the most intimate material, takes a wet braid and rends what thick falls around your throat. You wash my face in your hands. Rubbing your hands until they are hot, you wash my face in your hands. You come for me and spread my knees. The pit bull must have been a bitch, first to step toward jeopardy. Her latent heat coils a holy capacity, her jaw, her lunge, seize, drag. But I'm not made like her. I'm made in your image. My blood only tastes like jeopardy, but it's nothing. The bitch is the saint in the room where we work out the formal feeling, and consent is but a hinge necked, ardent. Some panting, white musk until my breath is just a hole. Hurt me like this. Let me know your teeth as dearly as I study my mother. So Joan alluded to Marnie Ludwig, who was a peer in the MFA cohort at Columbia, and I'd like to read a poem of Marnie's to honor her, because she was a really galvanizing presence in writing this book. And I'm going to read Braille, which is from her 2013 book, Pinwheel, and I used a line from this piece as one of my epigraphs. Braille. I knew better. The one star, a fixed gear grinding over the paralytic lake like a keepsake. Would you rather be dead than bored, dead than loved? I would. I held my lily head. I went swimming with horses. Afterward, a faint rain troubled the water. The secret of the blind is the hand. I strung paper flowers. A two-fingered breeze spun lavender from the weather vane. So thank you, Marnie. The next poem I'm going to read is a letter to Marnie. And prolific contemporary artist Mike Kelly makes an appearance in the poem. He shot himself in 2012. Nightjar. Marnie, your whole pinwheel is on the internet. Fucked breathwork can be a source of time travel. Cast out into the weather of your blood a fortune of grief. Nightjar, Marnie, where all you are, I hope rest has swollen to bless you. Smoking's breathwork, you'd never say. Your weather vane made a circuit of a lightning herald, language white lit, ragged, and annihilated temperature, and I was a dog searching for temperature. A list of comforts. 1. Softness was only Mike Kelly soft. Solitude marveled into alienation, into art. 2. Someone in your cohort gave you an imperfect pack of cigarettes. In the photograph, you are searching eyes and a pursing exhale. In my clairaudience, the exhale has a vowel sound, the umbilical fear rush that died when you died. Do we carry our friendships into the ground with us? Do they marvel too long in the sun like mud red green cut stems of roses wrapped in cellophane? I cast your weather vane for a quiet altar. You stayed up all night while your horses slept in their fly masks. Dear Marnie, when you lift the roof of your mouth, when you let the air go, you make a cathedral of the letting go. I went to art school in Los Angeles. I worked in sculpture and some performance and always had a notebook open in my studio as an undergrad. An avenue I'm exploring now is something that could be called self-ekphrasis, even though I kind of cringe at that. But these next 3 poems reference my own sculptures. Bracelet for who I was. Dusk blushed, desert shirt thrown over the duct, fastened still by the weight of shown stones sewn into inside cuffs. Just a prayer to notch gravity's bus, I had to apply my hands to something kind and my own, and understood to be dross. I learned tension, turned as a flank of marble, fingered veins precise, how to cut in. You made a chisel and its sheath. You handed it to me, my first instrument of writing. I score and score the memory, the backs of our hands brushing. A sculpture in a present tense, who does not seek closure? Okay, this is a new poem that I'm working on. Where is it? Okay. And it's also kind of in that self-ekphrasis rumination. Okay. Untitled, 2006. Here is a black plastic horse and her underwritten will. Here, an innocent hum, a borrowed light box with its cord winding around a simple oak shelf, some shy possum tail, and here, needle and thread left loose, nothing tied off, an 18-year-old mind. And baby teeth in a small tin box with a sliding lid and a skyscape painted on it. Here are my pocket-sized, spiral-bound notebooks, more than a dozen. The simple oak shelf, $45 in 2006, with a routed slit in the top for paper, for light. Bookshelf burnished and auburn, East Pasadena. When I lifted Sumi ink from a bottle with a flat brush made from my own hair, the way the wood drank of the ink, drank in the light in my shining face, it was a blessing. I didn't know the world was wide enough to gift pleasure like this, texture like this. I mean, the illumination was so plain. The longing, I mean. A private shock, an insight with no one around. How eager the wood, a wet black miraculous, a love, a mind, an eager love, holographic and matte. I make a portal where books should rest. I use all my ages. If I pause, will you hear the green insulated silence of this? I made a thing and wouldn't give it a name, knowing language comes later, that language would yield in due time as a bone stands up and a girl touches her power. A tree turns black, and still it sucks light, like this, like this. Trust is a voice with light inside it. Trust is a voice with light inside it, and light thrown up on a wall, untitled, untitled. A universe in a gesture is a sculpture I would learn. I would learn the horse of the teeth, the needle of the notebook, the mind on the page, and in the ink, in the hair, love. It was love to meet a girl in the oak grain and know her name. It was my own, and together, a secret. Okay, I want to share another new poem. I have this long preamble, which I won't really read to you, but the part of this new project is thinking about legacies of teachers, some more problematic than others, and a particular teacher I had in art school had a really greedy, indulgent interpretation of Chris Burden's work, who is an iconic performance artist who used physical risk to express his political consciousness. So yeah, in the new body of work, I'm exploring artistic legacy, the impact of my broken teacher's teacher, and recovering my love of performance art. So this is called Derivation, and it's dedicated to Burden, and it's kind of an interpretation of his origin story. Derivation. There was an accident. No anesthesia, emergency room, foot flayed wide. When I returned to my body, true shocks of attention's flush, throbbing axis, I discovered a null point, whole skin, outside. After the accident, I became arbiter of risk's translucent tide. I surged near my body, and through burden, isolation, beholding, epinephrine, endurance became my education and pride. My accident, I was just 12 and playing, and then whoever writes sage to wed the spiritual hormones, horizon, time, alive, knows when I returned to my body, I blued trust and the need to test it and test it. Who am I in performance? A hive. There was an accident. I tempered my form thus, this old in art. And, two more. This next poem channels the voice of Eva Hess. She was a post-minimalist artist in the 60s, and she made pioneering sculptures using then new material technology, and she used latex and fiberglass and plastic. But from exposure to these materials, she developed cancer, and she died when she was 34 in 1970. The title is W-H-O-L-E, whole. I live for the time my work is not having been made, but being worked for love. I don't know how to handle the precautions. Inside the respirator, my ego becomes vapor, endlessly inhaled. I can't read. My own breath turns to sweat. Across this face-close pain, I don't love anyone. But glass filaments, but lengths of fiber. A friendship spreads between my hands. One cannot be made whole the same way twice. The Cutters, for my teacher. I see your face in the wet stone of mine. You might misremember my dress in the rain, light moving across its satin as though any Rafi seam could cry intercession. The private lessons of unbecoming, please, please, into anything else. I just want to learn, to be admitted. I want to believe myself outside the art. And you reach under your ribs with a knife. Just a little hook of pain, you curve, no testament, no abstraction. Shiv of quiet. Big seed, little star, cat head on the lawn, the impossible red, the overcast red. Thank you.